Okay, so we're going to talk about casting with this plaster material called Plaster that we're thinking of using in ASL, and this is also a technique that we practiced in Ceramics 1. And so I'm going to walk you through the process. So the plastic craft comes in these big pieces, and if I actually open this up, it comes actually in these big rolls, and you'll have to use scissors to cut this stuff up into some smaller pieces. And I
just regular scissors?
Well, you can use regular scissors, yeah.
Okay.
It's awesome if you have some kind of heavier duty stuff.
Okay.
But this is kind of a messy project, so just be aware of, plaster is white. It's going to show up on dark clothes and things like that really well. So work cleanly and be organized and be aware of your space. So I have kids cut this stuff up into different sizes though, so you can see there's kind of a pile in front of me. And I would definitely make sure to cut a variety of sizes, maybe the biggest being about so big, and maybe even some small pieces like this big. The smaller pieces are going to lay flat over your fingers. The larger pieces will be good for like a palm. And before it gets started, you want to coat any area that's going to have any hair on it, well, any skin actually, with lotion, or like Craig said, Vaseline works best, right?
Yeah, if the kids don't mind Vaseline,
yeah.
As well.
Yeah. And in my classes, I had both. So, and then I also, we did our faces, and so I had like hair nets and things like that, so that students would rip their hair out. And I also have a bucket with some warm water in here. So this is like a gauze that has this plaster coating on it. And I ordered this stuff through KCDA.
Nice.
And so what I'm going to do is start to cover the large areas. So all I'm doing is taking one piece at a time, soaking it in the warm water, and then I'm just draping it on my skin, and then just kind of pasting it or pressing it flat. And at least one layer where all the pieces overlap and touch each other is going to be sufficient. If you want to do more than one layer, you can. But it's really important that you have all your pieces cut up beforehand, because otherwise, as I've seen a lot, kids will be trying to hold their hand in a position that's covered in wet plaster, and then also trying to cut new pieces as well, and it doesn't seem to work out very well. Also, you're just going to do the top of your hand. I had a student that went all the way around his whole hand and it dried, and he had to cut it off with scissors.
Oh.
So you'll have to, if you want to do a full hand cast, you'll have to cast it in two different sections and attach the two pieces.
Okay.
I can show you how to do that. So I've got my palm at the top of my hand covered. Now I'm going to start to do these small strips over my fingers. Casting is a real common sculptural technique that you can research online if you just enter a search cast sculptures. You'll see all sorts of examples pop up. So you're essentially just coating the hand, and then you're holding it in place until it feels like it's fairly hard, and then you're just going to peel the cast off of your skin. But the best casts will fit pretty tightly to the skin and will not have big flaps and folds and things.
Okay.
And you can see, if you look at my pile over here, I'm running out of smaller pieces.
You want to cut yourself?
Sure, that'd be awesome. But I just want you to notice that I had a pretty large stack going here, and I ended up running out. So
just little pieces like this.
Yeah, pieces like this. If you can create a large stack, you don't feel like you're going to be wasting the material.
Okay.
Or you could share it with another student even. But it's pretty much impossible to cut this stuff while you're trying to cast.
Yeah.
And you're gonna need a lot more than maybe you think. But it is kind of expensive.
Uh-huh.
I think a box of that was like $90.
Okay.
And just as an example of how much you might go through, I went through I think 4 boxes of that, of this material, with 6 ceramics 1 classes, so
Okay.
it's like 200 kids.
Okay.
So you would order a little more, or if you run out, I always have
Okay.
some too. But essentially that's the technique.
It's almost like fiberglassing.
Yeah. Well, and you can cast other physical 3D forms too. But hands will work fine, and like my ceramic students also cast their faces. But I would suggest you start on hand first.
Have you done it over jewelry before? How does that work?
I have done it over jewelry before, and I think as long as there's not a ton of detail and no cracks and crevices, and the plaster can settle, it peels off fairly easy. But the plaster is going to set up or dry really quickly, so you're going to see immediate results, which is always awesome, especially for kids.
Yeah.
You want some more of those?
Yeah, that'd be awesome. But if you were planning on casting your hand to represent a particular sign, you would have to hold your hand in that position the entire time you're casting.
Okay.
And you might have somebody else do it. Sometimes, a lot
Oh,
of the time
use
when I
somebody
did it in
else's hand.
college, one person did it and then you did them afterwards, like if you're doing their face or something.
Well, that's a good idea.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, the ceramic students teamed up when they cast each other's faces.
Yeah.
And I had-
It'd be hard
yeah.
to cast your own face.
I did.
You did?
The first time I tried to cast my own face, and so I did everything around my eyes, and I just left. I
Yeah.
left the eyes. Yeah.
Yeah, that's way more than I would have thought you'd use.
I know, right?
Yeah.
And it's not really even that thickly layered.
Right. No.
They're really just overlapping each other once.
Yeah.
But the cool thing about this, though, if I wanted to do a full 3-dimensional cast of my hand,
Mhm.
after this dried, I would then flip my hand over and hold it in the same position. I would cast my palm, and then I would take the 2 halves,
Mhm.
and I would just rest them together, and you can take these little strips, and you can just cast over the 2 pieces. And you
After
can
you take them
create
off.
Yeah.
Take them off and then.
You
Oh,
can cast the
cast
2
them together.
pieces together, yeah.
Oh.
And you can create your little 3D cast. And if you want to make adjustments, you can just take scissors and cut the dried, trim a nice clean edge or something
Nice.
like that. So it's pretty easy to work with. It's just a little bit messy, is all.
That's okay.
But it cleans up with water usually. Okay. Yeah, please. But also, every once in a while, taking your finger and kind of pasting the plaster, making sure that,
Like smoothing it out.
yeah, that
Okay.
it's covering all of those little pores between the fabric and, I don't know if pores is the correct word, but
Mm. Works for me.
yeah,
How you gonna do your little finger?
I am gonna do it.
So relaxing.
And warm water is always nicest to work with,
I bet.
so your hands don't get cold.
Oh, that's a good point.
Yeah. So that's a big part of what I do is trying to think the process through in its entirety, so it's most comfortable and user friendly for
Yeah.
kids for all these projects. So.
Yeah.
But we definitely found at the end of first semester when kids were casting their hands that as the stuff was drying, that some kids got really cold.
Oh.
Like their skin would get really cold. And you want it to be a good experience.
Oh yeah.
So, and then if you see any little thin areas, like I've got some spots here where I
Oh,
can
yeah.
see through the mesh, you know, then you can paste another layer.
Okay.
But that's essentially it, and then you'll let it dry, and depending on how many layers you put on, will determine if your dry time's fairly quick or kind of slow. But I think it was maybe like 10 or 15 minutes before it dried, and we could peel off the casts.
Okay.
And it's just important that kids know that maybe the first time you try something you might not be successful, but
Mhm.
if you do make a mistake, that you just want to try and learn from it, not repeat the same mistake twice.
Right.